to Unapologetic and Free, our new series called
You Don't Know My Story.
I'm Lekia.
I'm Shar.
We're sisters by blood
and friends by choice.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to our new series, You Don't Know My Story. We are excited about this new series because it's an opportunity for people to share their story. So often we encounter people day to day, but from the outside looking in, right, we don't know what someone may have gone through. And so we created this show to give people an opportunity to share and encourage someone else to live another day, to encourage someone else that this is just a chapter in the book, but it doesn't have to be the final say.
Now, we hear the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover. So a lot of times we meet people and they seem like, or they have everything together, but don't judge their story based upon the chapter that you walked in their life on.
Right. And we ended up, he allowed me and my daughter to come stay with him, which was a big deal. That means I was that much closer to my son. And mind you, this happened a few months later. Okay. This was over a little bit of time, not like, and this is over a little bit of time. And so my daughter and I stayed with him. I sold all the things that my ex had left us with. So my ex would always leave us with animals. Like my daughter had a goat. There was chickens, there was dogs, because my ex knew how much of a bleeding heart I am, and I wouldn't leave them to just die or not. Like, we'd feed the dogs really well. You know what I mean? Like, we were and he was like that. He would always I brought a puppy for the kids. And I'm like, who's going to take care of this puppy? Because you ain't here, and there I am taking care of this puppy. And he would bring the dog food because it would, obviously he didn't want to leave me money. And I'm going to tell you why he didn't leave me money, because I did try to escape a few times. And he actually had me found in Acapulco, which was 12 hours away.
Wow.
I took a bus with the children. I was trying to get to Mexico City to the consulate. Really hard in a foreign country when you don't know anything or resources or where to go. And so that was what I thought I needed to do, but he found me, which was scary, right? That he found me and made me come back. I thought I could never get away from him. He didn't even want me, but he didn't want me to leave, and he didn't want nobody else to have me, and he didn't want his freedom to be compromised or his anonymity, there's the word, right? For other people to find out who he was. Now, for y'all to really understand, my children did not know their real last name their entire life.
Wow.
So, mind you, my daughter was 9 months old, so she was there, right? The first 7.5 years of her life, she did not know her last name. We could not speak of my last name or his last name, because if anybody would look it up on the internet, they could find out who he was. Because he's the wanted fugitive, right? My son knew from kindergarten, but then my ex would brainwash him, and it hurt me so bad. I would not agree to it, but I could not agree to it, because then I got beat.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, and so my story about my short hair is because I do not keep it long, because no one's pulling my hair again. There's that. So, and you know what? It was one of those things he told me, he's a very macho kind of guy, that like toxic masculinity kind of guys, that if you ever cut your hair, I'll leave. Well, I should have cut it a long time ago, and it was like, but that insecurity plays. Yep. But that insecurity plays in us, right? Like, oh, okay, I won't cut it, just for you. Da, da, da. We do that, especially when we're young. I don't know what it is about young women's minds. We think we have to play along and not stand in our own 2 feet, and he would pull me by my long hair. He would drag me across the concrete. I mean, never again, right? Never again. And I'm not saying all men are bad, but, I'm not a man hater, because there's so many people, no, not a man hater. There's good men out there. There are good men out there, right?
Absolutely.
We can give them the benefit of the doubt that they can step up and continue to be good men without us bashing them. It just happens to happen that the bad ones just make a big noise, right? And they cause the most damage. And they make a bad name for the rest of them. So we stay with this guy, and we're there for a couple months. We're trying to get my son back, and my ex is getting nervous. And I'm still married to him, right? But he's getting nervous because I'm there. I'm in the same town. That to him is a threat. He goes, and thinking that I have support and somebody's helping me. That really got him nervous. Well, it got so bad that he was being more abusive to our son.
Mm.
So he told me I'm going to kill him. He almost did. He said, I almost choked the life out of him. You need to come get him. Now, narcissists really love money and material things. And my son was like 12 or 13 at the time, and wasn't happy that his dad had a girlfriend with a child, and they were all buying clothes, and he had no clean, good underwear or anything like that. And so, how boys get, but the other was, that's my dad. And the way he treats my mom. And so my son kept thinking about that. He's like, my sister doesn't even have clothes, and you're buying this little girl clothes, and I don't have any underwear. And and I get it. And you want to fix the world when you're that age, but he decided that he was going to punish his dad, and he broke his computer. Well, that's where, my ex blew his lid and choked him. He was 13, and the neighbors came out. They don't tolerate child abuse in Mexico, really don't. All the men came out to come beat him up. They didn't though, because they're kind of scared of him because of his connections. But they came and pulled him off and said, "You can't do that. He's a child. He's your son. Why would you do that? That's crazy." And then he emailed the guy I was staying with and said, because they knew each other, but they weren't friends. They just had known each other. Tell her to come get her son, or I'm going to kill him. So that detachment is so foreign to me. That's your own son. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that was a way of him not being accountable for his bad behavior, right? His actions. Yeah. So I ended up going to get him. I shouldn't have gone alone, but I did, because I thought I could handle it, because I had been with that man since I was 17. He started fighting with me. It turned into a street fight. I ain't a fighter. We don't fight. That's not, I use my words. I'm pretty smart. We don't fight. If it has to come down to it, I'll defend my kids, to the death, obviously. But but I don't, why? It's unnecessary, waste of energy. No, we're in a literal street fight. He has me by my hair. His girlfriend's biting me in the face. I know, it's so dramatic. I'm so sorry. And I know I say it I can talk about it now, because trust me, I'm not that person. I'm not, I'm very detached. That was in the past. It was what it was, like I said, because it needed to happen for the next step to happen. Very unfortunate, but it did, right? He ended up, my son lost his mind because dad's hurting his mom, right? Let go of my mother, don't hurt my mother. And my ex punches him in the face and splits his face open. 10 stitches in the forehead. Yeah. This is why, if we don't break this kind of behavior, especially with men, it just continues, right? This domestic violence, the violence within the home, the violence with children and mothers, it needs to stop, because men, when they don't know their way, if they don't find their path, if they don't find God, if they don't have faith, they're like wild animals. And I hate to say it like that, but they are, and so we have to really hold steady on really raising our boys to be good men. And I always thought that was going to be the hardest job of mine, was to raise my son to be a good man. That was going to be harder than trying to raise my daughter to be a good woman. I just had to teach my daughter to stay away from it. but to teach my son to grow up to be a good man was going to be way harder, because he's going to be responsible for having a wife and children, and and guide them, So, that incident in the street, in that fight, I got the courage to go to the police, which I normally wouldn't have, because one, I don't have identification. I don't have a passport. I don't even have an entry card to get into the country. I go to the police and I tell them what he did, and they're like, "Oh, we don't tolerate abuse to children." So they put a warrant for both the girlfriend and him. Now in Mexico, they don't have a warrant law. I mean, not a warrant, like like they can't enter premises. If they catch you on the street, they can get you.
Okay.
They cannot enter premises. This is why Chapo keeps escaping. I'm just saying, you know, if you know that story. And so I thought, wow, this is so bizarre, right? Well, anyways, so that kind of put him in hiding, which was more beneficial to us, right? And this guy that we were staying with, you know, of course, my son, we're all staying together now with him. And so, you know, we're like slowly, you know, trying to figure it out, but he leaves and had left me. That was actually the time, the guy that we were staying with at the time, that he went to a wedding in New England. And so I couldn't explain why I didn't have a passport. I just kind of played it off, and, you know, it's real good about avoiding. I just didn't talk about it. I was like, oh, you know, oh, have fun. I'll stay here and watch your plays, you know. And
Right.
just
I'll house sit for you.
Yeah, I'll house sit, try to get my son back, you know. And I didn't tell him all the details. I was just trying to handle my business, you know. And when he came back, that's when he found out my son was staying with us now. And I had told him what had happened. He was just in shock. He couldn't believe all that craziness happened. He didn't come from a family like that. And he had said something in just conversation about my name. Now, I know that sounds funny, but he had told them my last name was Salto, thinking it was the last name of my ex's alias, right? His alias name. And I looked at him, and that something just triggered in me. And I thought,
no.
Yeah, right. No. I was like, no, did I tell you that was my last name? And I said, it's Tracee Wilkerson. And he was like, what? Because it never came up in conversation. I never brought up my last name. And he goes, what? Tracee Wilkerson? And then I just started telling him everything. I told him how we got there and all of it, right? He leans down on, like, in his, like this. And I'm thinking that all men are the same, and he's going to tell me to get out, right? Take you and your kids, get out of here. Why are you causing me problems, right? I just, in my mind, just paranoid because I had lived a life like that, right? With my ex-husband. And he actually stood up and he says, I'm here to save you. Now, I had actually wrote that in my journal about 3 years before that.
Oh my God.
And I'm telling you, I kept a journal just in case I was missing or something happened, that maybe somebody could come across this, that there was a record of us in our existence, right?
Who you were. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And he goes, well, my aunt is Janet Reno. And I went, what?
What?
And I said, I wrote papers on her. Like, what? She was in the news every week, like, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So it's actually his mom's sister. He had lived with her before. I mean, that was his aunt. You know, that was his aunt. That's Janet Reno. And I thought, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, I'm from Floresville. I mean, San Antonio, Floresville. You know what I mean? Like, small town. Like, and your aunt's who? And I'm like, the head of the FBI? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah. And he goes, well, you know, let's figure this out. Let's get you out of the country. Let's, you know, figure this out. And that was the biggest, like, oh my gosh moment.
Look at God.
And I'm telling you, I did write papers on her. I was obsessed with her in high school. So I know, you know, those things that stick in your mind of like, why do you have a certain interest in something? Because they may come up later in life. Like, right. Thank goodness I knew how to sew. I could cook. You know, I could doctor up my kids. You know, you see what I'm saying? Like, all those things were things that I needed as tools to take care of us while we were there. Mm-hmm. I made a chicken coop by hand. I took care of chickens and goats, and, you know, I did all those things. I made my own yogurt.
Look, and this was before YouTube, okay?
Thank you. Before YouTube, before you could, you know, all of that stuff. It was like you know, a good thing you learned and you paid attention from what you learned when you were younger. And I just knew all the things in life were coming together, that all the tools and things that I learned were coming together, and people and things were coming together.
Right.
Who thought that I look like I came from the mountains, like the girl came from the mountains, and and then I came to, like, you know, to this guy's life. Well, that guy and I are still together. That's George.
When you said that,
Yes.
you just told me that the other day, and I said, "Oh, that's who he is."
Yes.
It
So
clicked.
yep, that's it. I knew you'd catch that whenever I said that. But so George and I are still together. We did get emergency passports. He helped us call the U.S. Marshals, get us home. The most interesting part was the emergency passports were interesting, but they were calling him like, she needs to get out of the country, like now. Like, you need to take her. And we're like, well, we're trying to get money together, because it costs money. There's nothing free about it. Emergency passports are $135 a person, and then flights, right? They're like, we don't care if you walk across the border. You need to get there. I'm like, we're in Oaxaca. It's like the last country at the bottom. Like, we were deep in Mexico. But we ended up, we flew out, but when he took us to the airport, and we get to the airport, and they pull us off into immigration, because, it's Mexico, and we're flying back into the US. So where's your entry card? Because we got to stamp the exit portion so you can get out of the country, right?
Right.
I don't have anything. What do you mean you don't have anything? Nope. We don't have anything. We want to get on the plane, though, and we have our emergency passports. And they're like confused and baffled. They take us to the immigration office, and I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to be stuck here. Please do not arrest us. Like, I'm thinking, like, try not to think the worst, but just like being prepared.
So much is going through.
So much. I'm like this close from getting on the airplane. Please do not be doing this. So we were there, and he goes, I don't know what to do with you. And I'm like, just put me on the plane. And, and the lady from the airplane, the stewardess comes in, or flight attendant. She comes in, she goes, I don't care what you need to do. She needs to get on the plane. And I thought, wow, like, she's really invested in this, but they're not supposed to leave empty plane, whatever their thing is, and he gives me a blank sheet of paper and tells me to sign it.
Oh, look at God.
I could probably never go to Mexico again, but I don't care.
I have no desire to, right?
It's a beautiful country, but not interested anymore. So we get on the plane. My kids are just thinking it's like another thing. And mind you, my son is a little bit older now, right? He's maybe 13 and a half, 14, he's 14. But they just think it's another thing because they've gone through so much, Right. And I'm just, the plane starts to take off, and I'm crying, just like, I never thought this would ever happen. I never thought we would be free. I never thought, oh my gosh, like tears of joy. Well, then you still have to get home, right?
And so we're home, right? Because
where's home?
So we're gonna go to San Antonio because that's where my dad's at. He lives in Converse, and so we get to Houston.
But you're believing he's still there
in Mexico.
No, you're believing that your dad.
Oh, I'm still believing. Well, so the U.S. Marshals contacted my dad for me, so they knew we were coming. So yes, so yeah, there was a little heads up. So good thing the U.S. Marshals were like, well, yeah, we've been dealing with your family. We've been looking for you for 8 years too, because they were looking for my ex. So if they're looking for him, they were looking, for all of us. So, so they helped us connect with my dad and my stepmom, and we get to Houston and we get flagged. And I'm like, okay, come on. Like, can we just get to San Antonio? Like, and they pull us to the back. And now I look back to some of those shows on maybe TLC or whatever, where the immigration, they take you on the airplane and they're like, you're in the back room, back.
Right.
And we get in there and there's a bunch of people waiting, to be like passed through, and they have to like, whatever, prove that they, whatever reason, and so we sit for 1 second, we get called to the back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, this ain't the plane. We need to go to the plane. So we go to the back, and so we're waiting. And so, finally a guy comes. He goes, oh, are y'all doing okay? I'm like, yes. Like, can we get on the plane? He goes, oh no, I'm your personal escort. You need to be personally escorted. So we have to make sure that you and your children are safe. Do y'all want something to eat? We'll take your bags. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. I, for some reason, thinking the worst, like, please do not sabotage this. Like, I just need to get to San Antonio. So they skip us through the line. They carry, they transfer our luggage for us because we would have had done it. They get my kids something to eat, and then we get on the plane and we finally make it to San Antonio, where my dad and my stepmom is. And, you know, my brother and his wife couldn't come. They were sick, but whatever. I was just happy to see my daddy. And so we stay with my dad, but, you know, the story gets a little bit crazier after that. But just, you know, I start cleaning my friend's house when I come back, because my dad tells me, you need to get to work. My dad's ex-military. You need to get to work. I said, yes, Dad, I get that. He goes, baby, you need to, for one, you got to get on food stamps. You need to get some financial help. You need to take care of your kids. You need to get some work. Like, you need to get
no
work.
honeymoon period at
Oh,
all.
No, you've been gone, no nothing.
Oh,
Wow.
I mean, he wanted to hear the stories, but he knew that I needed to make sure I took care of my kids, right? And he knew that I've always been a busy bee. I've always been the one that had jobs. I mean, businesses, since I was 18. My dad knows my history of working hard. He just didn't want me to get stuck in sadness and depression. Okay. He knew if I was working that I would keep busy, because my busy would be of purpose to help my children. But if I was sitting around moping, that I was probably going to get stuck in depression. So I get it. I get it, And so my friend calls and she says, well, I called her, I was like, trying to reconnect. And my dad goes, I have Kathy's number. Do you want to call her? I'm like, yes. So Kathy was my tax person since I was 18. So she used to do my taxes for my businesses. And so she's like, you want to clean my house? I'll pay you $10 an hour. I was like, $10 an hour? They get $10 a day in Mexico.
Right. You start comparing,
comparing, because your life has changed. It was a big adjustment from having businesses and being pretty set up to living a very simple life. A life of no luxuries, a life of like boiling your water, like times we didn't have electricity, I would have to wash clothes by hand. That's not fun. Washing blue jeans by hand is not fun. No, just saying.
Not. No.
You'll tear up your hands anyways. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But you do what you got to do, And beans and rice and beans is what we had for a lot of meals, because we just had to make it happen. And thank goodness we had chickens, because we'd get the eggs, and if we were great, we had a lot of chickens, we'd kill the chickens, So we did what we had to do. I turned into pioneer woman for sure. But when, I got to work, but I cleaned her house. And 8 days later, I signed up for Mary Kay. So she was very successful in her own right, not in Mary Kay, but she owned a real estate business. She's a broker. Okay. So she's a broker, and she, also had a tax business that she had done, obviously, since I was, forever. And, her house is paid for, lived in Churchill Estates. And I was like, oh my gosh, Kathy, you've done so well all these years. Just so happy for her. And she's like, I'm grateful that you're cleaning my house, 'cause like, it's just me and my son. And, she works really hard. And I saw people leave her office with a Mary Kay bag, and I thought, what? You do Mary Kay too? That's funny. Because we always have preconceived notions. And she's like, yeah, I sell about 1,000 a week. And I'm like, what? I want to sell 1,000 a week. I don't want to clean your house.
Right.
But I mean, I do it. I had a smile on my face. And so she goes, really? You do? Because people hardly ever sign themselves up for Mary Kay. It's one of those things they really need to learn about. I was like, heck, I'm free. I'll do whatever. Nobody's going to stop me. Who's going to tell me no? And so then I joined Mary Kay, and within 2.5 months, I bought my first car with cash that I made from my Mary Kay business. And I needed a car.
Okay,
Mama was on a mission. I needed a car, right? So I bought my first car, and then I just sold product. I knew that if I had something, and I'm not trying to promote Mary Kay. I'm just saying this is like for women to understand concept of, being an entrepreneur, right? And having a different mentality than just punching a clock or not getting educated. Like, education's everything if you're not entrepreneur driven, right? Because an education can get you a good job. But if you don't have a good job, if you're real street smart and you can run a business, that'll work for you too. So I knew if I had product that I could sell it and I'd double my money. I was like, that doubles. This doubles. So if this doubles, then I know I have a future that I'll continue to keep making money, right? I understood it because I had businesses, right? I had a liquor store. I understood it, but I knew that that was my freedom and flexibility I totally needed, because I needed to be there for my kids, because my kids were going to go through a lot of therapy. They
Right.
didn't go to school for 7.5 years.
Now,
So they
that's
had,
what I was just thinking. If you had them in some type of therapy.
to go to, yeah, we sent them to therapy. So we put them in school, so they had a test into school, right? Just test to see what grade they were in. Well, thank goodness they learned some skills in life, and they must have paid lots of attention to me, because my daughter got, they all got placed in the right grade. And then my daughter's like a super,
Thank you, Jesus.
yes, and my daughter's a super smarty, because she got like a state award, she even did her SATs and got college level SAT scores, and I'm like, at the 7th grade. Oh my gosh. So, thank goodness that they learned and picked up all those things along the way, and they weren't just blocked by the struggle, right?
Right.
Because sometimes we get stuck in the struggle that we can't think past it. We are just stuck in it. We're just, hey, it happens. I was stuck in it for 7.5 years. My
Don't
children
get stuck in the struggle.
That's right. Don't get stuck in the struggle.
I'm writing that down.
Yep.
Right.
I'm going to write that down too. But Mike, and they saw me cry every night. My children would have to wake me up in the morning and tell me they were hungry, because I could not wake up because I was that depressed. Mommy, you need to wake up. And my son could cook and stuff, but he's like, Mommy, I fed the chickens, but Mom, you got to get up. Like, it's already 1, or whatever time it is. And just worried about me. Mom, are you awake? Mom, are you alive? Mom, like scariest questions you could get asked by your kids, but that was our reality at the time. But thank God we're not there anymore. And now,
Amen.
now we have an amazing life. My son, he lives on his own, 0 debt. Kid has 0 debt. Works. Woo! Yes, he has a assistant manager position at Mellow Mushroom Restaurant on the north side there, and he loves what he does, and he loves to be. He's kind of quirky, but he's a good kid, He likes his things his way, which is fine. Lives on his own, pays his rent, and I can't be more grateful for him just being a really good human, and not too concerned about pushing him into college right now, because we're not in the business of wasting money either. So if he's not prepared, I'd rather him learn a trade and
Right.
and be ready and do what speaks to his heart. Because it's his life, and I know we try to guide and mold our children to what we want them
That's
to do.
true.
But if you give them the freedom, like God has given us the freedom to have, right, free will, then they will make the right choices, because we were the example.
Right.
And so I see that in him. And my daughter, she's just quiet, and she's very smart, and she helps me in my office.
Is she still in high school, or did she graduate?
She's still in high school, so we pulled her out because of the COVID situation and stuff. And then some other school things, but we homeschool her. So George helps to homeschool, and I do as well. And she uses a program. We have a program that she's in. And George is an author, so he's a published writer. And I'm like, well, he's smart. He's a master's, like he can teach you. So I feel like sometimes we get too stuck on the conventional. Obviously my kids did really well not in the conventional for the first 7.5 years, right, of their life. But life skills and teaching in the right way. And I'm not saying I keep her at home because I think my way is better than any other way. That is not, because I really believe schools are good because community is good. It's each person is different though, right? So each person sometimes requires something different. And I'm not promoting either way. I'm not that type of person, because I know it's always different for each individual person. But I absolutely love my life now. I'm going to go pick up my second Mary Kay free car on Friday if y'all want to come out and check it out.
Okay. Well, we are so grateful. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
You said this Saturday?
This Friday.
Oh, this Friday. Wow.
Yeah.
Day before Christmas, huh?
Yes, it was like a good surprise. Can I show y'all one thing? Because my George had done something for me. He because his aunt was Janet Reno, he presidents would go visit her, obviously, and she had Parkinson's. So Clinton would go visit her, Obama would go visit her, and they would come and chit chat with her, and they had, you know, the security with them and all kinds of stuff. But she lived in a little cabin in Miami, you know, very modest. But she lived with Parkinson's and, you know, and couldn't, you know, and Alzheimer's. So she didn't know what was going on. But George had written to the president at the time and said, thank you for the respect you showed to my aunt. And then I would love to tell you the story about my girlfriend, which sounds funny, but, you know, because we're old, who says girlfriend, you know, about the story of my girlfriend and her, you know, her survivor story. And on my birthday in 2016, I got this letter from Obama. I don't know if you can see it. Hold on, let me see it. I might have to go up the blur. So I got this letter from Obama telling me, my background is messy.
No,
you're fine.
It's
So you can
pink,
see,
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh.
So, and it, you know, I'll just read it real quick if this inspires anybody. It says, thank you for taking the time to share your story with me. It sounds like you have been through a lot, and I want you to know I admire your strength and determination. In difficult moments, remember that as Americans, we believe all things are possible for all people. Where you are or what's happening right now doesn't have to determine where you'll end up. And if you have faith in yourself and hold on to the courage and resolve that have brought you this far, I'm confident you can reach your goals. Please know I'm rooting for you and I wish you all the best. Sincerely, Barack Obama. I was like, that is the best birthday present ever.
That is awesome. That's a great place for us to actually end, because that's a good, very inspiring note.
Yes.
We're grateful for you coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you so
just
much.
blown away. God does some amazing things, and you know, all things really do work together for our good, even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes when we're going through. And so we appreciate you today.